Hi, my name is Dave. I'm 62 years old and I live in China. I have listened to many of your stories concerning the walking away from the Democrat Party. I love to listen. I get a real sense of courage because I know some of you have gone through quite a lot. I've never been a Republican or Democrat, so I don't have a walk away story of my own to share. But it prompted me to think about the first walk away. That was the walk away of the Democrat Party. For indeed, they walked away from our Constitution. They walked away from our country. And I would like to share their walk away story with you. The Democrat Party as we knew it is no more. It is gone. It is dead. It has been replaced by what I call the New Left. What is the New Left? They have four central tenets. They favor socialism over capitalism, groups over individuals, limited speech, and global citizenship. I would like to address all of these tenets, and I want to start with socialism. Before I begin, I want to introduce you to two people.
Okay.
No, the failure of capitalism is that even when it's working the way it's supposed to,
People still get hurt, and that's
it's still not succeeded.
Not succeeded.
because individuals are still being repressed,
I see.
and that is what capitalism is inherently an oppressive system.
And the communism is inherently a what system?
Successful and
Successful.
not repressive. It's the point of communism is liberation. So it's a society that puts people's common needs before individual selfishness.
And when was the last time that the communist system ever succeeded?
I mean,
Even with its failures.
the only two countries that have 0% illiteracy are both socialist countries.
Right.
So
Which are what?
Cuba and Venezuela both
Cuba and
have
Venezuela have
0%
0% illiteracy.
0%.
Everyone in Cuba and everyone in Venezuela can read.
Now, these two folks, and I'm going to name them Bart and Lisa, they mentioned the failure of capitalism and the success of socialism. You've probably heard comments like this before. The wonders of socialism, by their thoughts, is that it liberates individuals and does not cause the kind of pain that capitalism causes. They cite the literacy rates of Venezuela and Cuba as evidence of this. But what happens when we actually look at facts? Okay, this first slide is a general comparison of the three countries, Cuba, Venezuela, and the United States. Freedom House is an organization that kind of monitors freedom globally, and they rank all the countries. The two rankings here, there's a general rating here, and they have three labels: not free, somewhat free, and free. In the civil rights category, they created a metrics, and they have a score. 7 is the worst score, 1 is the best score. So you can see where the United States falls in relationship to the two socialist countries. Average wages, of course, the United States is way over the other two countries, more than 10 times the average wage. Literacy, there's a point to be taken for the literacy. America has suffered with this literacy over the last 20 or 30 years. Then the murder rate, you can see Venezuela is 4th, we are 83rd, and the murder rate in Cuba is the 85th. Now, here's a fun fact sheet for Venezuela. Caracas, Venezuela, is the second most dangerous city in the world. And according to the BBC, they are experiencing 83,000% inflation. As you can see, going to Starbucks might not be a great idea, at least not every day. And now some fun facts for Cuba. According to Amnesty International, Cuban law limits freedom of expression, association, assembly, movement, and the press. Concerns have also been expressed about the operation of due process. And of course, you can see from the Human Rights Watch of 2017, we still have a bit of a problem with arbitrary detention to harass and intimidate critics or independent activists or political opponents. Of course, not everyone is pointing to Venezuela or Cuba when they talk about socialism. Listen to what Mr. Bernie Sanders has to say.
When I talk about democratic socialism, I'm not looking at Venezuela. I'm not looking at Cuba. I'm looking at countries like Denmark and Sweden.
Now, we hear this a lot about Denmark, but let's take a look at Denmark. According to the Prime Minister, he would disagree with Mr. Sanders. He clearly states Denmark is far from a socialist planned economy. Denmark is a market economy. That's not socialism at all. That's not democratic socialism. That's not any kind of socialism. They are a market economy. Moreover, Denmark has school vouchers, and most of those school vouchers are going to for-profit schools, private schools. Also, there's no national minimum wage in Denmark. I've never heard Bernie Sanders talk about getting rid of the minimum wage. I've never heard Bernie Sanders say we need to go to school vouchers for everyone. And he usually doesn't talk too well about the market economy. Yet he cites Denmark as the model of socialism he wants. It's just a lie. Upon investigation, we see that Bart and Lisa's comments are exactly the opposite of reality. What the evidence shows, what the facts demonstrate, is the very system they live in and are arguing against provide precisely the things they say communism or socialism provides: liberation for the people. Conversely, socialism does the very things they say capitalism does: oppress and harm the people. And Bernie Sanders, he's flat out lying. Usually in any discussion about socialism, we hear about the redistribution of wealth. Take from the rich, give to the poor. It's always framed within the context of economics. Socialism is government ownership of the means of production. In reality, it's not redistribution of wealth, but rather a confiscation of wealth. The larger bureaucracy necessary to manage socialism keeps most of the wealth. What the poor get are usually in services: schools, medical care, daycare, things like that. And then those services will degrade over time. Now, while that does help the very poor immediately, it destroys the middle class. And Venezuela is a perfect example of that. In Venezuela, the former middle class is now lining up in the streets to get the toilet paper. As I said, socialism controls wealth. Without a free market, the government would decide how much an inventor, a singer, a movie star, a doctor, whoever would get paid. Most of the money would likely be kept by the government, usually to strengthen the military, silence dissidents, and keep the bureaucrats happy. You may see the big problem with this. Who the hell would accept a system in which effort, creativity, hard work does not impact reward or your income? This is the part of socialism that most people don't think about. In order for the system to work, the government needs sheep, not free thinkers. Indoctrination is fundamental to socialism, and the New Left has been doing this for years. In our public schools and our universities, Bernie Sanders depends on people like Bart and Lisa. He depends on sheep to just accept what he says as truth. Bart and Lisa appear to be intelligent, they appear to be literate, but their thinking is exactly backwards. That's because they were indoctrinated. They were trained to think like this, to ignore facts, to ignore logic, to ignore reason. The New Left need people to be obedient and do as they are told, like sheep. They trained them in our schools. Free thinkers would never accept socialism like Bart and Lisa. They would investigate and seek the truth. Take a look at these two clips.
Socialist-in-Chief Hugo Chavez admits the minds of children there are taken over at a very young age.
Yes, we are indoctrinating children from the first grade through college, every grade, private schools, the ideology of the revolution, the ideology of socialism.
This past September, before world leaders at the United Nations, Chavez made an open call to President Obama to come join his socialist revolution.
Obama, come over to the socialist side.
I'm wondering how you see the role of our educational system, what it's doing right now, what forces are driving it, and what constraints are on it, and how should it operate?
Mm-hmm. Well, I quoted the Trilateral Commission view of the educational system, namely it's a system of indoctrination of the young. And I think that's correct. It's a system of indoctrination of the young. That was the way the liberal elites regard it, and they're more or less accurate. So the educational system is supposed to train people to be obedient, conformist, not think too much, do what you're told, stay passive, don't cause any crises of democracy, don't raise any questions, and so on. That's basically what the system is about. And all of this is a technique for selection for obedience. And I don't know how to prove this, but I have a feeling that when you go to the elite universities, you find more obedience and conformity, probably because you're getting the students who were better able to do it, you know. Well, all of that is functional. That's the way it works. And it works right through graduate school.
Currently, our public schools indoctrinate our children. I would argue one of the reasons our literacy rates have slipped over the years is because we spend too much time on social indoctrination, teaching political correctness, and not enough on teaching the 3 R's. We're teaching students what to think and what to learn, but not how to think or how to learn. This is one reason it's been so easy for the New Left to rise to power. Our kids are doing and thinking exactly what they are told, just like Bart and Lisa. They're becoming sheep. I'm going to show you a few clips of what it looks like when those sheep become adults.
Thank you.
We are about to march. We need everyone to pay attention.
On cloture. In 30 minutes. Meet me to the left. If you would like to go to an office. To spend time. With your senator.
To vote. Let's go watch the vote. In offices that you wish to communicate with. I am going to go to Heidi Heitkamp's office.
Why? She's on our side.
George Carlin saw this years ago. What you just saw should scare the hell out of you. These folks, these sheep, taught to obey in school, are now being publicly programmed. As a free thinker, I can tell you, if I ever went to any group function and was told to comply in this manner, I wouldn't walk away. I would run away. As you can see, socialism is not just a way to control wealth, it's a way to control thought. Create enough Barts and Lisas and you can start a movement. That's what the New Left has done. And how have they been so successful? The answer is the second tenet of the New Left, groups. Groups are more important than individuals. After all, if you're going to train sheep, you might as well train the whole flock. Now, we commonly think of this notion as identity politics. That goes back to the beginning of socialism and that old expression, workers of the world, unite. That was their first attempt at identity politics. It failed miserably, and I won't get into that here, but suffice to say, over the last 50 years, socialist leaders in the United States targeted new groups, new flocks. The first two and the largest were blacks and women. Moreover, they learned to hide their efforts behind valid issues of racism and sexism. The Democrat Party is where they chose to hide. When the free speech movement of the 60s began, issues like the Vietnam War, civil rights, women's liberation attracted huge followings of young and enthusiastic supporters. Perfect for indoctrination, perfect candidates for sheep. Remember those radical students of the 60s? They were the first to be indoctrinated, after which they became radical teachers and professors of the 70s and 80s. The new academia taught classrooms full of new Barts and new Lisas. Moreover, they taught their students how to identify as a group member, not an individual. This is a very important tactic. The glue of a cohesive group is their emotional bond, not their intellectual bond. This makes it easier to walk away from reason or facts. With individuals, you must provoke thought. With groups, you simply have to provoke emotions. It was perfect for the New Left. I want to show you a couple of clips of how indoctrination and groupthink is working in terms of skin color or race. I need to set the first clip up a little bit. It's an incident that occurred at Evergreen College in Washington State back in 2017. Black students there had started a protest called Day of Absence several years prior. On a specific day, black students would go home. They would not come to campus in protest of white privilege. This gave all protesting students a sense of solidarity, a kind of reaffirmation of group membership. But it also served to reinforce what they've been trained to believe. Black people are victims. They are oppressed. In 2017, the students decided to change the protest. The group insisted that white students should stay home. They demanded no whites come to campus that day. Dr. Weinstein disagreed. He had supported the efforts of previous years, but he emailed the staff with his concerns. He suggested that demanding a group of people not attend college on a particular day simply because of their skin color was to him the very definition of racism. Well, the email got out, and he was confronted in this hallway.
Public protest, was that not targeting people of color?
I'm sorry.
Due to an absence for people of color.
I didn't hear you at the beginning.
Your protest of day of absence, your presence taken as a protest, if you will. That's what you said in your email.
Yes.
But you're saying it's targeting
for black students.
May I answer that question?
Okay,
wait a second. First of all, day of absence has been here longer than I have. I have never protested it until the idea. Until no. First of all, I didn't say. Would you like to hear the answer or not?
No.
Okay. History could pivot in the direction of the values that you are standing here for.
Yeah, resign.
What?
Resign.
I'm not resigning.
Okay.
If I owe an apology, I will deliver it.
Wait, hey.
All white people are racist. So I put this up because I really want any white person in the room to know up front that this is what we're dealing with, that it's not going to be this coddling of white tears and what that looks like. We're not going to discuss, oh, maybe some of us have worked it out. No, you're always going to be racist, actually. So even when you're on your path to trying to figure out how to be a better human being, because I believe that white people are born into not being human, like that actually, instead of people of color and black folks being dehumanized, that actually everyone is dehumanized off rip within white supremacy, that y'all are born into a life to not be human, and that's what y'all are taught to do, to be demons. So in this particular way, white people are all racist. So I just want y'all to know that up front.
In that first video, you can instantly see the power of groups. Now, of course, everyone knows groups can be used to create voting blocks, but indoctrinated groups, they can be used anytime. They can be deployed to advance agendas or shut down discussion. They are easy to mobilize, and the New Left does it very well. There are some other less obvious benefits, though. First, groups offer anonymity, which provides cover for anyone to say or do things they normally would not do on their own. They also provide volume, and this is very important to the New Left. The volume of a crowd can shut down any attempt to engage in discussion. Engagement is the enemy. It requires free thought, the use of logic or reason. Developing indoctrinated groups allows the New Left to ignore reason or logic. That is why keying off emotion is so important. Now let's see how the tactic is worked with women. Here are a few clips.
But really, guess who's perpetuating all of these kinds of actions? It's the men in this country. And I just want to say to the men in this country, just shut up and step up. Do the right thing.
You have a right to be heard, and you have a right to be believed. We're with you.
National politicians and other leaders of the New Left no longer see individuals in their political discussions. It is always the group. Perhaps Senator Hirono believes Dr. Ford, but she applies her belief to every female in the country, as does Miss Clinton. And here we have a university professor from Georgetown spewing hateful groupthink. It's not about Kavanaugh. It's not about the men on the Judiciary Committee. It is about white men. And interestingly, she doesn't identify all women, but all feminists. That's her flock. That is an important distinction. It is designed to dissuade and protect. Some folks who might challenge her may have second thoughts. They don't want to feel the fury of the feminist flock. So they will be dissuaded from weighing in. Those that do challenge her will be assaulted by those same feminists. Emails, tweets, Facebook, phone calls, doxing, whatever it takes. All feminists will be on alert to lay siege on any dissenters. I'd like to show you 3 clips of how indoctrinated groups or crowds protect the New Left on different universities.
Of comfort and home for the students that live in Silliman. You have not done that. By sending out that email, that goes against your position as master. Do you understand that? Then
no, I don't agree with that.
Then why the fuck did you accept the position?
Because
Who the fuck hired you?
I have a different vision
You should
than you.
step down. If that is what you think about being a master, you should step down. It is not about creating an intellectual space. It is not. Do you understand that? It's about creating a home here. You are not doing that.
You're supposed to be our advocate.
Yeah, I saw his.
Talk to you?
No, you need to get out.
Well,
you need to get out.
No, I don't.
You need to get out.
I actually don't.
All right. Hey, who wants to help me get this reporter out of here? I need some muscle over here.
As I said, groups shut down discussion. What this means is the New Left no longer has to worry about provoking thought. That's why they never offer any new ideas in our national discussions. They don't have to. And if you simply need to provoke emotion, use a trigger word like racist or sexist, and the appropriate group will deploy. And they can be deployed on national TV. Here are some examples.
Please don't just come here today and then go home. Go to the Hill today. Get up and please get up in the face of some Congress people.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
Shame! 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 Shame!
Sergeant at Arms will restore order in the gallery.
Mr. Manchin.
Clerk will suspend. The Sergeant at Arms will restore order in the gallery. The Sergeant at Arms will restore order in the gallery. The Sergeant at Arms will restore order in the gallery.
Don't you wave your hand at me. I wave my hand at you.
When you grow up, Robinson.
When I grow up, we grow up. How dare you talk to women that way? How dare you?
So leaders of the New Left are directing their indoctrinated groups to intimidate, harass, and bully anyone with whom they disagree. Now, the New Left calls this free speech, and the New Left call these people protesters. It is not, and they are not. Free speech in America has never included harassing other people. It has never included bullying. For most Americans, bullying is not considered to be a right. But to the New Left, whatever works. I do want to mention a couple of things that point out how well structured the New Left is, how powerful this indoctrination really is. Did you notice Congresswoman Waters said, create a crowd, then get in someone's face? The message there, don't go in alone. You will be unable to shout them down. Moreover, that might result in discussion, and sheep don't know how to respond to discussion. And that last clip, the guy getting on the elevator was expressly talking to the shouting woman. Her response epitomizes the power of groupthink. She said, "How dare you talk to women that way?" He was not talking to women, he was talking to her. But she saw herself as all women. Once indoctrinated and clearly identified, groups are mobilized and, as you see, can be a very powerful weapon. The New Left uses it often. But in America, free speech is an important right. perhaps the most important right. And that right can be used to disagree and point out what is going on, much like what I'm doing right now. I can only do this because we have the power of free speech. So that brings us to our third tenet of the New Left, limited speech. While indoctrinated groups can help, getting rid of free speech requires more. The New Left needs soldiers, someone to force an end to free speech. Let me introduce you to Antifa. Here are some pictures of the Capitol Mall during President Bush's inauguration in 2001. You may remember how contentious that was. The disagreement eventually wound up in the Supreme Court. So here are some protesters, holding signs, stating their thoughts. What we used to think of when we heard the word protest. 16 years later, we have Antifa. Can you see the difference? We have riots and violence on Inauguration Day. Days following the election, there were cases of Trump voters being beaten in the streets. The press referred to it all as protesting, but the difference is clear. Antifa uses the same strategy that the New Left used back in the 60s and 70s. They hide themselves behind other causes. They showed up at Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter rallies, and any protest against Trump. Who are they? What do they want? They are Marxists and anarchists. They want the destruction of our Constitution, an end to our sovereignty. I encourage you to read what is on their website. It is not a secret. They openly advocate alignment with any political activist group or issue that they can exploit, and in which they can use violence. They operate in cells and in secret, and they are global. They are supported by other communist or socialist groups. Now, these are my attempts at close-ups of some previous pictures. We can see who is paying for their signage, at least. You can see on the bottom of the sign on the left where it says, "Refuse Fascism." Well, who are they? Well, that's an effort formed by the Revolutionary Communist Party after the 2016 election. For that sign in the center, well, that was sponsored by the Party for Socialism and Liberation. You can see a partial book list from their website to the right. In short, we have global socialists funding an effort to violently attack our country. And, as always, they hide their intent. They say they are anti-fascist and will protect us from Nazis. This buys them some legitimacy. And then academia covers for them. Here's Professor Bray from Dartmouth. He insists that the violence is a vital form of collective self-defense. He says it's all part of the shared purpose of combating the far right. Who do you think gets the label the far right? Here's another professor from John Jay College, Professor Isaacson. It's a privilege to teach future dead cops. So with explicit instructions and manuals of operation under the guise of protecting us from Nazis, and with the cover of the New Left and academia, Antifa does their thing. The next few clips will give you more insight into how they operate and who they are.
People dress in black bloc for a few things. One,
Scott Crow has been leading anarchist and militant leftist groups for decades.
so people put on the masks so that we can all become anonymous. And then therefore we are able to move more freely and do what we need to do, whether it is illegal or not.
So some people will push back on that and say that the black bloc is to keep people from being identified and arrested when they break the law, when they commit crime.
Damn right. It's a good way to avoid the ramifications of law enforcement.
What's the object that you guys want to accomplish? I guess you don't have one.
Just walk the fuck on, man.
No, we were planning on doing that when y'all pursued us. But
all right, get the fuck out of here. Shoot that motherfucker for running his mouth.
Right, after she shoot him.
She has every right to, man. He ain't gonna get it in her fucking
so you're
face.
telling us to back up, but then you're telling us
we're not here to argue with you, dude. Fuck off.
But you're doing
Fuck off.
You are doing it,
No,
though.
I'm not.
You are.
So what is your goal? I mean, if you had...
You're not fucking welcome here. That's our fucking goal. Get the fuck on,
free
bitch.
speech.
All right, fuck off. You're doing somewhere else. Get the fuck out of here.
Hey, this is America. I thought there was free speech in America. Hey, I thought this was America.
Get the fuck on.
You're organizing. We are off.
Get out of our community. Get out of our fucking neighborhood. Go do your free speech in your fucking house.
have a mask on.
Motherfucker! Oh shit, he's bleeding. Yo! Hey, man! He's bleeding!
In that last video, we saw an Antifa member. He was hiding behind a woman. Then he comes out and using a chain with a bike lock on the end, he cracks open that guy's head. He's protecting us from Nazis. Turns out academia doesn't just provide cover, they participate in the violence. Fortunately, he was identified. Meet Professor Clanton. With Antifa as the militant arm of the New Left, language becomes weaponized. First, let's call Trump a Nazi. Then, call anyone that voted for Trump a Nazi. Then, anyone that supports anything Trump says is a Nazi. And soon, half the country are Nazis. Antifa responds by creating more than 200 cells across the country, according to the Department of Homeland Security. But they say they're on our side. They are our champions in the fight against Nazis and fascists. As such, they become the self-appointed arbiters of who is a Nazi or fascist. The rhetoric of the political arm of the New Left provides cover, and the media broadcast it. How do they determine who is a Nazi or who is a fascist? Simple. They listen for hate speech. Only Nazis and fascists could use hate speech. What is hate speech? That depends on the group you're in. Generally, any speech that is used by the oppressors is hate speech. Who is the oppressor? Whoever the New Left wants. When someone speaks out against the New Left or its goals, they are instantly labeled. We've all heard them: Islamophobe, xenophobe, homophobe, sexist, racist, whatever. And of course, all of them are Nazis and fascists. All these words are triggers. When they are used, things happen. The activist arm of the New Left are instantly mobilized, either in our streets or on social media. The political arm of the New Left hit the airwaves. They all parrot each other. It's almost like they're reading off a script. And the militant arm of the New Left come out to protect us all from the new member of the Nazi Party. Remember Professor Weinstein from Evergreen College? He's now labeled as a member of the far right. He has stood for progressive ideas his entire life. He supports the notion of white privilege and would like to help get rid of it. But he spoke up once. He challenged one time. Now he's a Nazi. He's a fair target for Antifa. While some Antifa members may get immediate satisfaction from the destruction and violence they create as they protect us, the deeper and more insidious side of this is we're silencing voices. People become fearful of speaking their mind. Some choose to no longer engage. It just isn't worth it. Some oppressed believe the oppressor has no right to speak at all. In Senator Hirono's words, they should just shut up. In the context of political discourse, free speech is being threatened in America today. Like that one Antifa guy said, do your free speech in your home. Younger folks may not know this, and I'm not sure it's being taught in school anymore, but in the 1960s, students were protesting in favor of free speech. This is a famous picture from UC Berkeley, often thought of as the birth of the free speech movement. Free speech is critical to advancement. It was free speech that ended slavery. Free speech brought us science, ended child labor, gave women the right to vote, forced companies to label their products, and allowed the civil rights movement of the 1960s to exist. Challenging new ideas is important, but it comes at a risk. You may offend someone. The question is whether or not the risk is worth the gains. In the United States, we've always believed progress is worth the risk. But now it appears that free speech is not as important. This is UC Berkeley, birth of free speech, setting itself on fire in protest against free speech. Now, in and of itself, it is sad to see. However, putting Antifa in the mix makes it very volatile. As the self-appointed arbiters of who a Nazi or fascist is, they can demonize the individual and, at the same time, help define what hate speech is. Every step toward legitimizing hate speech is a step away from free speech. If we are not allowed to challenge ideas or people, then real change cannot occur. The result is everyone bobbleheading in agreement with the status quo, afraid to say what's on their minds. This is actually fascism. Indeed, this approach not only prevents growth, it becomes regressive. Once we say hate speech is not free speech, what about don't like speech? Or what about uncomfortable speech? I am not using hyperbole. I don't believe these folks are in the United States, but it should become apparent. The sign makes sense to me. Attacking Muhammad must be hate speech. We certainly can't attack Jesus either, or Moses. In fact, we can't attack religion. Aren't all atheists doing nothing but spewing hate speech? Should they be censured, perhaps arrested? There is no end. Each offended group will identify their own hate speech and simply add it to the list. It is a tough fight, but the New Left is well organized and committed. Fortunately, the biggest impediment to the New Left's goal, defeating the Constitution and defeating sovereignty, is the Constitution itself. There are two ways to defeat our Constitution. First, teach our citizens to hate it, and that's being done. Much like Bart and Lisa, there are university students who are protesting against free speech in favor of hate speech laws. They've been trained to believe that free speech is our enemy. The other way to defeat the Constitution is to bring people into our country who don't care about it, for whom it has no real meaning. That brings us to the fourth tenet of the New Left: global citizenship. One organization that is committed to this goal is BAM, by any means necessary. They are defined in Wikipedia as an American militant left-wing group. Notice the writing under the picture: Defend American Democracy. Let's see if that's true. On their website, they have a link to their principles, a total of 22, I believe. Part of their first principle is to protect gains of the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Part of their 11th principle is to oppose every measure aimed at resegregation. Well, that's a lie. They support safe spaces, and they supported the protest at Berkeley in which white students were denied free access to the campus. Both are aimed at resegregation. As I just showed you, the free speech movement, born at UC Berkeley, was a fundamental gain of the civil rights movement of 1960s. This article tells us they're lying again. This headline should read, Victory, free speech dealt a humiliating defeat at UC Berkeley today. They're not protecting free speech. They're cheering against it. Look at the reference to the concentration camps. Another lie. This is a concentration camp. The United States has never had a concentration camp. What they are referring to are detention centers. Can you see a difference? Which picture is a concentration camp and which picture is a detention center? They would have us believe both are the same. They lie about who they are, and they use charged language to trigger other groups. Again, provoke emotions, and there's no need to provoke thought. They're fighting for global citizenship. Get rid of the borders. They're fighting for socialism. They want to end capitalism. They want to get rid of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the defender of the Constitution. Get rid of it, and you can get rid of the Constitution. It's easy to see they are not really fighting for American democracy. They are part of the New Left. They are indoctrinating their members by lying about their true intentions. They are searching for more Barts and Lisas, more sheep. Those they can't find inside the United States. They want an open border so they can recruit them from outside of the United States. The real problem for the New Left is Trump. All the crap you hear about the monster Trump is globalist anger. Obama was our first true globalist president. Our doors were opened and globalist effort to defeat our Constitution and sovereignty began. International treaties or deals were made without any ratification of the U.S. Senate or any support of the U.S. Senate. UN assessments of our elections gained credibility, and open apologies set the tone that America was sorry for being America. We would step down from its leadership role. The globalists were very happy. By the summer of 2016, they became downright giddy. It was apparent Miss Clinton would win, and her campaign rhetoric helped calm any fears globalists might have had that President Clinton might support policies that First Lady Clinton did. In short, Clinton was a convert. Millions of dollars were funneled to her through a variety of mechanisms. The American political establishment was already in place. The corruption of our government, especially in our Justice Department, was already in place. All they were waiting for was the victory celebration on election night. I am sure the general consensus was that Clinton would win 2 terms. Those 8 additional years of globalist compliance would be enough to damage our sovereignty and Constitution enough to make victory all but inevitable. Then entered Trump. Trump must go by any means necessary. So much outrage. All the planning, all the effort, all the pieces in place, all the deals made, all the billions of dollars spent the previous 8 years, all of it gone in one night. The Democrat Party, formerly an American political party, is now the New Left, or what I call the New Left, a globalist political party. They are enraged. Their dream of replacing the U.S. Constitution with a global government was destroyed, at least temporarily, by Donald Trump. Since the election day in 2016, or election night in 2016, they have tried everything to get rid of Trump. He's a Nazi. He's a white supremacist. He's incompetent. He's crazy. He's sick. He's colluding. He's illegitimate. His White House is in chaos. He doesn't know how to work with people. He's mean. He's nasty. Anything and everything has been thrown at Donald Trump. And they scream these things every night, not just on news programming. This hatred is infused into our sports, our music, our TV, our movies, everywhere. The Democrats are dripping with hate. If we elect a Democrat House in 2018, they will impeach President Trump. They know full well the Senate will never find him guilty, but they will impeach President Trump because they are driven by hate. All they can see is revenge. They don't care about reason, facts, or reality. They just want some kind of revenge. You may think the hate is because, or they tell us the hate is because he is the bad person. And we know that's not true, because we heard none of these things for the first 69 years of his life. And he had an active life. He was involved with a lot of these people. The truth is, Trump has cost them trillions of future dollars. This is why Hollywood, the media, Silicon Valley, establishment Republicans, those so-called never-Trumpers, folks from the UN, folks from EU, hell, even the Pope has come out against Donald Trump. All these people have globalists' interests. They stand to make trillions of dollars if America would simply give up its sovereignty. Simply drop a few of the tenets of the Constitution so that a more socialist kind of approach can be applied to the United States of America. Unfortunately, you folks who have awakened and walked away from all that, you're caught up in that rage. There are still many sheep, and the sheep still do what they are told. And if you walk away from those sheep, they will hate you. And some of you have had to deal with that hate. Some of you have had to deal with hate within your own family because they are told to hate. So, like a bobblehead, okay, I hate. They won't even know why. If you could ever find them alone to sit down and talk with them, they could never justify their hate. They would never get beyond saying, well, because Trump is a Nazi or because Trump is crazy. Ask them why, they won't be able to tell you. They just know the triggers. I will tell you, I saw someone awaken on national TV. He didn't wake up and walk away from the Democrat Party. He woke up and walked away from the Republican establishment. His name is Lindsey Graham. I've never been a fan of Lindsey Graham's. I am now. When he made his 5-minute speech at the Kavanaugh hearing, He was not a Republican. He was not an establishment guy. He wasn't even a conservative. He was just an American. His connection to the values of America, of being fair and open and willing to look at facts and reason and evidence, made him an American. He recognized in that moment that every American deserves fairness. Every American deserves equality. Not just those who scream really loud and get in people's faces and try to bully people. Every American deserves equality. I get chills when I hear your stories. I really do. It's just, it's amazing how you guys inspire me. I know it had to be tough, the journeys you've made for some of you, and you're still making them. But when I hear the resoluteness in your voices, I feel strength from that. I wish I could join you in D.C. I would love to be surrounded by Americans. Not genitals, not genders, not skin colors, not accents, not nationalities, not religions, none of that crap that the new left says is important. I would just love to be surrounded by Americans, people who believe in the general goodness of the Constitution, the general goodness of community. Well, I can't make it there, but I will say this. I'm going to have a drink, a toast to you as you celebrate. I hope it's a large gathering, but regardless of the size, it means a lot to this nation. People need to see who you are. People need to hear your stories. I would encourage all of you to try to find just one more sheep, someone who's close to waking up. Maybe you can talk to her or him. See if you can convince them to actually vote Republican. But if you can't, if you could just get them not to vote Democrat, tell them to stay home that day. Tell them you'll buy them a beer to stay home. Okay, well, as I said, I live in China. I just turned in, by the way, my ballot, my overseas ballot. For the first time in my life, I'm 62 years old. I'll be 63 next month. For the first time in my life, I voted one straight party ticket. I have never done that before in my life. And I voted Republican, and I'm not a Republican. I claim kind of more of a libertarian role. I didn't vote for Trump in 2016. I will vote for him in 2020. After seeing all the hatred and anger and wanting to get him out of office, and regardless of the notion of fairness, they will do anything they can to get rid of him. I'm going to vote for him. He's a bit of an asshole to me. I have trouble listening to him sometimes because he fumbles his way through language, but he is an American. He's what I call a bullshitter. He's the guy at a party that's driven the fastest car, caught the biggest fish, had the greatest time in a movie or a sports game, had the hottest chick. So he's a bullshitter, but he is an American. And when I see the billions of dollars and the humongous effort that the globalists are throwing to get rid of him, I've got to stand with him. Anyone who can weather that as well as he's weathering it, that's someone of strength, an unusual kind of inner strength. He may not be a politician, but and this time I would argue we don't need a politician. We need, whatever you want to call Trump, we need that right now. So I encourage you, please, don't vote Democrat in 2018. Please vote American, or just don't vote at all. Thanks again for all you're doing, and thanks for listening. Bye.